Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns and it's good to be back with you again. And for those of you who may not have noticed it, the Times-Picayune earlier today developed a selective case of amnesia in making an endorsement of State Senator Neil Reiser for treasurer. When I say developed a case of amnesia, I mean it's fine if you want to make an endorsement, but particularly as a professional journalistic body, you would at least have an obligation to excuse away an incident in Neil Reiser's career, specifically the Edmondson Amendment. And I was stunned from my previous video at how many people did not know that Neil Reiser was responsible for this Edmondson Amendment. I'm going to be very brief. He tried to sneak it in at the 11th hour. None of the senators, none of the representatives were aware that what the hell had happened here. That includes John Bel Edwards, and we'll have some video footage of him in just a moment. But at any rate, it took Senator Dan Claytor filing a lawsuit to get that utterly disastrous piece of legislation that he knew about and he sponsored. We'll give you the link to Lee Zurik having to call him on the carpet about it because he wouldn't fess up to it, okay? Lee Zurik had to flush him out. But it's amazing. Now I'm going to give you the link for the Picayune endorsement. You're welcome to read it. Trust me, you'll see no mention of the Edmondson Amendment in it, which is why I say they developed convenient amnesia and can't remember. But I tell you what, I want to jog everyone's memory for just a bit. As many of you will recall, the late C.B. Ferguson fought this Edmondson Amendment tooth and nail. And at the height of it, when he was encouraging just everyday people like me and you to call their legislators to have this thing litigated, I'm going to break away. We're going to bring CB back from the past and let you hear a 17-minute commercial he made on the Moon Griffon show asking people to call their legislator and have them litigate this matter. Let's break away for just a moment.
Attention. Please help stop the taxpayer ripoff by Senate Bill 294. Call your legislators and tell them that they must litigate the Edmondson Amendment. We cannot afford higher taxes.
Now, you just saw C.B. Ferguson imploring everyday citizens to call their legislators and have them encourage litigation on behalf of the State Police Retirement Board to undo the mess that Senator Reiser created, okay? And let me just say this. I'm really not surprised that the Picayune would develop amnesia about this, because at the very height of it, now hear what I'm saying, at the very height of this, okay, there was, I'm talking about literally as this thing is ongoing, all right? This was back in 2014. This is a solid over a year before John Bel Edwards won the race for governor in Louisiana. And John Bel Edwards had said the day before he was going to call for an investigation of this, all right? And I attended the press club meeting on that, and I waited until 10 minutes to 1, which means they're just about to wrap it up. Numerous mainstream media reporters had asked questions, and nobody's willing to address the 800-pound elephant in the room. So that got left up to me, because much of the mainstream media doesn't have the guts to take this kind of thing on, okay? It's that simple. I can't phrase it any other way, other than, you know, most of these press club meetings are nothing but an opportunity to flatter and you know, whoever their invitee is. That's not me, okay? Now, if you don't like me questioning folk on it, revoke my membership. That ought to be a good article in itself. But at any rate, C.B. Ferguson sent me an email saying, Robert, I cannot believe that no one in that mainstream media, if you hadn't been there, John Bel Edwards would have never had to address it. I want to break away for a minute, it's about 2 minutes and 15 seconds, for you to hear. Now, he had already announced he would be running for governor. But here's what John Bel Edwards had to say about the Edmondson Amendment. Let's break it. You'll hear me asking the question because it got left up to me. None of these other brave souls from the mainstream media had guts enough to ask the man the question. Let's roll. In regard to the transparency issue that you just mentioned, would you care to comment regarding the latest upheaval in the Mike Edmondson situation, and to what degree, I know you've said you want an investigation, to what degree you may play a role in that investigation, mere oversight or otherwise?
Okay, thank you for the question. This has to do with the Senate Bill 294 and the Conference Committee report that was offered on the last day of session, and the bill dealt with police officer rights. It wasn't a retirement bill, and a non-germane retirement-related amendment was put on in the Conference Committee. The truth is, it wasn't explained well on the floor of the Senate or the House by the people handling the bill. And I take Jeff Arnold and J.P. Morrell at their word, and they believed it to be an innocuous provision, and they didn't understand to do what in fact it does. But it got by. That's my responsibility to read those things before I vote on them, and I'm sorry that it did, most especially because in my 7 years, I have no less than probably 20 times met with constituents, some of whom were still employed and some were retired, who had made irrevocable decisions with respect to their retirement benefit that we weren't able to help them with. I would call the retirement system that they were in and confirm that it was an irrevocable decision, and I would tell them we couldn't help them. And there we are passing a bill like that on the last day of session that actually did confer a more generous benefit upon Colonel Edmondson and, as I understand it, one more trooper. Clearly, that's not the way we should do business. If the bill was appropriate and if what it did was justified, then it ought to withstand the scrutiny of doing it in the right way. Part of the trouble for me is the actuarial note on the bill wasn't done until 3 days after the session had adjourned. Now, I did ask the Speaker to conduct an investigation to find out how that happened, who on the conference committee or which staff members inserted that language. And what he told me, and I do understand this, at least to a large extent, that was the Senate bill. It was handled by Senate staffers and not by House staffers, and that he didn't believe that there needed to be an investigation in the House of Representatives, and that any investigation would have to come from the Senate in order to get to the bottom of it anyway. So I did have that conversation with the Speaker yesterday.
Thank you. So you see, it's really not surprising to me that the Picayune would develop amnesia, because as I said, even when they were at the height of this, at the height of it, no one had the guts enough to ask an announced candidate for governor his sentiments on this. Now, if you'll notice, first of all, John Bel Edwards basically said he was duped, all right? Who was he duped by? He was duped by Neil Reiser, okay? And what was the solution? He said he had spoken with the Speaker of the House. Now, John Bel Edwards at that time was a member of the House. The Speaker of the House says that, well, this thing's going to have to be investigated in the Senate, since that's where this problem originated. And I wish we had C.B. Ferguson's post back then, because C.B. said, oh, this ought to be just great. We're going to leave it to an investigation in the Senate. Who runs the Senate? John Alario. Good luck with any so-called investigation of this disaster. And that will bring us to where we are now. Neil Reiser has clearly aligned himself with the Alario camp. We're going to give you the embedded JPEG, because I think that brings more attention to it, of the fundraiser. We'll give you an embedded JPEG of the contribution by New Orleans East. That is, it's basically street money is what it gets down to, okay? This is an entity headed by a top lieutenant of Mitch Landrieu, all right? And so, folks, what I've brought to you today is letting you know that if the true conservative vote doesn't go out there and counter what's happening in this election, Neil Reiser, this whole strategy that they've got, cozying up to the Democratic machine money, may work for him the same way it worked for John Bel Edwards, due to apathy on the part of conservative voters, be you Democrat or Republican. Because I'm going to tell you right now, there is no way that Neil Reiser can cozy up to the folk he's cozying up to try to win this election, and then once he gets in office, turn his back on them and say, I never knew you. To quote a phrase from the Bible. I never knew you. That'll never work. They will cut him off at the knees. And he knows it. And I'm going to tell you something. The strategy they're using will work if we have sufficiently low conservative voter turnout, which is why I'm asking every conservative voter across this state, fight this. And I'm asking you to vote for whom I believe to be the one true fiscal conservative in this race, John Schroeder. Thank you so much.